The 12 Rules by Estoni Shaw. Rule number 8. Aim small, miss small. You've heard of the phrase before, I'm sure. It's a foundational concept of marksmanship. The idea is that if you need to engage a target, rather than trying to just hit anywhere on said target, you focus on something very specific, something small in the center of it. A coat button, a zipper, a pocket. You focus so hard it becomes your whole world, and the thought of straying outside of that target isn't even a possibility. It's not on your mind at all. You aim small and you really apply yourself. Well, if you do miss, you're probably going to miss by a little. And even if you miss by a little, your round will still cause a lot of pain. It's not just useful for marksmanship either. If you have a really clear picture of your target or your goal, and the discipline to apply yourself towards achieving that goal with single-minded determination, you can be a very dangerous individual indeed. It also sure as shit comes in handy if you are staring down a horde of faceless horrors intent on consuming you like a fucking bulldog eating an oatmeal. Which is exactly where I ended up when the suit wandered into my life once more. Michael, I need you to do this for me, okay? Lee normally handles this, but he is currently indisposed and I'd rather not interrupt his wager with the new guy. I need you to help me out here. Besides, these sacrifices aren't even your people. They are foreign nationals training with the US Army, so no one will ever know. We'll just say they walked off post and are trying to settle in the US illegally. They'll never be found, and no one will care. The garrison commander already has the press release drafted. The suit explained calmly as if to a child. Mikey started. Can we just wait a few hours for Lee to get back? Michael, I'm on a tight schedule. I don't want to wait, and you don't get to dictate my schedule. He stepped forward and placed an open hand, palm upward, on Mikey's shoulder. Do you want to object? I can hear it. I can hear your thoughts. His eyes closed as if in ecstasy, and the words bit like a winter wind. Then he leaned in. Go ahead and say no. I dare you. A single bed of sweat rolled down Mikey's nose and fell to the floor. I'll do it, he said softly, eyes still downcast. I'm sorry, Michael, what was that? I can't hear you. The suit smiled with clenched teeth as he bit out the last sentence. I'll do it, he spoke up, avoiding the suit's gaze. Good. The convoy will be going through the city of faceless men soon. You have 45 minutes starting. He looked at his watch. Now. Mikey locked eyes with me and shouted, Echo 75, the truck ready to roll. I began running as if a fight bell had rung, releasing my pent-up tension, ignoring the suit as Mikey grabbed his tools. We jumped into the truck and Mikey white-knuckled the entire way, breaking every speed limit we came across. Once we were out of the cantonment area, we left streetlights and the semblance of civilization behind to embrace the empty plains of the desert. Mikey glanced in his rearview mirror. God damn it, he's following us. He never does that with Lee. Whatever, we'll meet him in the city. He was like to watch, he said with disgust. As we pulled into Motown, the entire city was bathed in light. Mikey let the truck idle once we reached Generator 2. Alright, Rook, get in there and kill the generator, then get your ass back here, Ricky-Ticky, okay? I looked behind us to check for the suit, but he was nowhere to be found. Then I leapt out of the truck and ran inside. It was a simple job, given the dangers involved in shutting a generator off. I wondered why they didn't add some sort of remote access, but chalked it up to budgeting. A stupid reason, which meant it was probably the right reason. As the incandescent bulbs overhead dimmed, I was already running out of the front of the building and diving into the truck. As soon as I had my ass in the seat, Mike accelerated and killed the headlights. What the fuck, him? Those things can get us with the lights off. He laughed. It takes them a little while to come out of their hidey holes. Plus, I don't really want the suit watching us right now. We moved into a section of the city that was still lit, and when we approached that section's generator, Mikey hit the brakes. Wait here, bro, he said over his shoulder without acknowledging me. He disappeared into the building for a few minutes before returning. I pressed, What did you do? He gave me a sidelong glance. Nothing, just had to make sure the generator had the right amount of fuel. Alright, we'll meet up with the suit, he'll be in the sector, he said, pointing to the unfolded map on our dash. Right here, close enough to watch the convoy as it moves into the darkened section of the city, but far enough away to be protected by the light. He likes to watch every time, and he likes us to be there until the job is done. We pulled up to a building safely protected by the lights, the Suits building. When we climbed up to the top, we found the Suits standing near the edge, watching the darkness, smoking a cigar. You know, I've really come to enjoy the products of humanity. Creation, destruction, kindness, cruelty. The dark and the light, against each other and even your own creations, your children. It's all just so right up my alley. He shuddered in exuberance. To destroy your own creations, there is no greater feeling of power, of control than that, and soon new creations will displace the old. Soon. The Suit glanced over at us and smiled. Well, maybe bending your creations to your will is a greater rush, convincing them to act against their own interests. That is something else altogether enjoyable too. It tastes a little different, but still quite wonderful. His smile vanished. Oh, lighten up, you're stuck with me. You're stuck working for me until I see fit to release you from your task. You might as well learn to have a little fun. His face twisted in delight. And so it begins. He had already returned to watching the incoming convoy when we started to hear the rumble of their engines. 3 vehicles in total, packed with 15 men. They were running under tactical blackout, so their lights were off to prevent them from being seen from the air. That's what their orders stated, so that's what they did. I winced. They entered the darkened city, driving onward without a care in the world. Suddenly, the tone shifted. The vehicles attempted to accelerate, and at the same moment, fire began erupting from the convoy. It wasn't long before the vehicles turned the main street that bisected the city and raced in our direction towards the light. The lead vehicle lost control as dark figures clutching its roof and sides finally overwhelmed the driver. The vehicle turned sharply and slammed into a wall, sending the faceless shapes flying about. The scene was repeated 2 more times as the remaining vehicles lost control. The faceless men were unfazed and popped back up onto their feet and swarmed the survivors. Screams echoed for agonizing moments as each in turn was silenced. Not all were consumed, though. Some were dragged into the buildings to an unknown fate. The remaining faceless forms stood there in the streets facing us, watching us with non-existent eyes. Ah, you see, the Suit spoke, savoring the moment. They don't consume them all. Some they convert to continue their ceaseless task, searching for the one that got away. Similar to the human heart, right? He laughed. And the one that got away is actually quite close, but they lack eyes to truly see. The lights in our section of the city began to dim. What? He screamed. What happened? I think we ran out of fuel, Mikey stuttered. The Suit stomped over to him until their faces were nearly touching as I sat there speechless, mind blank from fear, watching it all unfold. The Suit's eyes clenched tightly as if searching for something. He frowned, then opened his eyes. I guess you're right, he conceded reluctantly. I need to leave. Now. All 3 of us rushed downstairs to get our vehicles, and in the chaotic darkness, Mikey slipped me a large caliber handgun with a couple of magazines he'd pulled from his tool bag. We stepped out from the building into the streets, and half a dozen faceless men were already arriving at a trot. 2 of them carried large, unidentifiable things I'd seen the first time I was in the city. Can you use your special time-stopping power now, please? I strained with my inner voice. The Suit didn't even acknowledge me, so I spoke out loud. It'd be really fucking cool if you would use your neat time-stopping trick. He turned to me, obviously rattled. He opened his mouth to speak, to perhaps make an excuse why he couldn't in the presence of these things, but he saw the gun in my hand and in Mikey's. Well, shoot them, you fools, he screamed. And well, who was I to argue? He had a point. Mikey and I drew to the advancing things and opened fire. It had been years since I'd gone to the range, but after a few rounds, I fell back into old routines. 2 center of mass, shift to the next target, 2 center of mass, and so on. To my surprise, hitting the center of mass of these things actually worked. Granted, they were about as hard to drop as someone wearing light body armor, but they went down. We kept moving forward, careful to balance the burning, screaming desire to run to our truck with basic survival needs of keeping rounds on target to drop on the faceless men before us. Aim small, miss small. In the opening volley, we dropped 3 of the things, but the remainder sprinted at us, making it even harder to hit them. Mikey would swap magazines while I fired, then I'd do so in reverse. We were careful to keep one weapon singing at all times, like we were anything more than amateurs. 30 feet turned to 20, 20 turned to 10, 10 to 5. Only one of them remained standing and it leapt for Mikey, swatting his weapon away and tackling him to the ground. It held him down and began to feed off him. In each moment I took aim, its void peeled parts of Mikey away molecule by molecule and consumed them. The tendril of life linking Mikey to the faceless man grew as more and more skin was stripped away into the void. I fired once, twice, 3 times. At the end, the faceless man was down and I couldn't hear a goddamn thing over the ringing in my ears as I dragged Mikey to the truck. The suit was gone, the dust of his car's speedy exit still hung in the air, bearing witness to our abandonment. Through the ringing of my ears, I could hear the eternal screams of more of the faceless men approaching. I could barely make out an audible plea, beckoning me towards them. I heaved Mikey into the back of the cab, and before I jumped in, I saw the thing they had dropped laying discarded on the ground. An avoid relic, an indecipherable in nature, and yet something compelled me against my better judgment to take it. So I did. I chucked it to the truck and fled. Defeated and afraid, in the rearview mirror, I thought I could see the bodies of dead faceless men illuminated by our trail lights. No longer faceless at the end of it all. When Mikey regained consciousness on the drive back, he whispered to me, We've got to get Sarah, we've got to get the generators back up and... Don't worry about it, man. We're going to get you patched up and then we've got it covered. Easy peasy. I suddenly felt exhausted, but one question remained. What did you do to the generator? Not much. I made sure it had the right amount of fuel to shut it off while he was gloating in another one of his lonely rants. I hate that murderous prick. Didn't work how I wanted it to. Almost had him. His powers don't work around the faceless men, as you may have noticed. He chuckled a little, wincing from the pain as the wounds on his face continued to ooze. How did you convince the suit you didn't know? He could read your thoughts. How could you lie to a mind reader? He smiled. I didn't lie. I focused on the truth. I focused so hard my thoughts didn't stray. I focused on the fact that I did check to make sure the fuel level was adequate. Adequate to fuck him over. But I didn't think about that part. I focused on that and my desire to flee. I emptied my mind and focused everything I had on those truths. Aim small, miss small.